Update 5.4 has brought us 5 new refines. This time we're getting new upgrades for Marisa, Mel Morgan, Quan, Valentine's Hector, and Sumia. This is the second seasonal refine, and as a reminder, this means Valentine's Hector will probably be on the new powers banner if you want to get him outside his rerun banner. Additionally, regular Hector can get Valentine's Hector's weapon via the weapon refinery, so technically he's here too. They actually would rather give 2 Hector ults a refine before the original one gets one. It's very weird. We're going to be talking about the new refines and some build ideas for each unit. First up is Marisa. She's a Hero Grail Infantry Sword unit, which is a highly contested group. Marisa, unsurprisingly, gets her Shamshir, which is basically the Sacred Stone's version of the Wo Dao. This is a 16-might sword that accelerates specials and grants plus 7 damage on special trigger, so this is basically an effect we've seen on some weapon refines. Faster specials and more damage when those specials hit. For the special upgrade at the start of combat, if special cooldown is at its maximum value, grant special cooldown count -1. If Marisa initiates combat or is within 2 spaces of an ally, she also gets plus 5 attack and speed during combat. So the first part of this refine is actually just times pulse 3. Very fun skill. It can help pre-charge low cooldown specials or get the ball rolling for higher cooldown specials faster. This is a great effect when paired with accelerated specials. For the second part of the refine, it's a very basic attack and speed boost. Always active on the player phase, and for the enemy phase, Marisa just needs to be near her allies. In terms of stats, Marisa has decent speed, but her offensive spread is nowhere near the craziness of some of the 5-star sword masters nowadays. She has the typical low 30s defense with low 20s res stat. However, she does come with very high base HP at 46. This is because Marisa comes with infantry pulse naturally. For the most part, an extra plus 5 attack and speed does help, but even that's not going to be enough if you're looking to outspeed some of the other insane sword units. Shamshir's main benefits will come from spamming specials, and this gets Marisa extra damage when those proc. If you wanted to, Marisa could run double times pulse. That would mean any player phase she starts with max cooldown will get her -2 special cooldown. With accelerated specials, this would already pre-charge a 3 cooldown special like Luna. However, if Marisa were to be at 1 cooldown, neither ability would activate, so there are for sure some fringe scenarios you have to keep in mind. If you want to run special spiral, that means Shamshir's effects only going to work 1 time at the start. However, that may be all you need to get that special spam going. On that topic, much like double times pulse, Marisa could instead get some infantry pulse support from her teammates. Unfortunately, her own high base HP actually hurts this potential. If you can get at least 1 infantry pulse from Marisa though, it would be great for certain setups. With that said, special choice is super vital for Marisa and Shamshir. She could run Moonbow, so Luna, Aether, or even Gale Force. You have to keep in mind that part of Marisa's damage output comes from her special procs, so lower cooldown specials would be nice. A very interesting build involves Wrath. Wrath's cooldown reduction does stack with times pulse, so 2 special charge each player phase. Marisa's high base HP does give her some extra breathing room for Wrath's low HP playstyle, and obviously another plus 10 true damage per special proc is fantastic, which to be Shamshir. A simple Moonbow proc would get her plus 17 damage if she's in Wrath range. Now, the scary part would be using 3 cooldown specials like Luna. First off, Luna would become a 2 cooldown special permanently, and Shamshir brings it down to 1 at the start of the battle. Marisa could tank a hit and then fire back with Luna with either plus 7 or plus 17 extra damage. Now, if she stays in Wrath range, then next player phase, if Luna is on a 2 cooldown, both Wrath and times pulse kicks in to pre-charge it. If Luna were to be on a 1 cooldown, Shamshir is not going to activate, but Wrath still does, and that also pre-charges Luna again. In terms of other passive skills, it's clear that Marisa probably still needs more attack and speed. We have a new attack and speed A skill in the ideal skill line from Luis on the banner. That skill is inheritable by infantry units. Otherwise, we can go with the usual attack and speed solo, Swiss Sparrow, or maybe even a push skill. If you want to go for the damage reduction route, then Spurn is a great option because it grants plus 5 damage on special procs, so with Shamshir you get plus 12 total, not bad. Marisa would love the % damage reduction, but you do need to stack a lot more speed. You could get away with Destined Counter, but Marisa may instead want an attack and speed A skill. Either way, this could be a fun setup with Aether. With Shamshir, she starts the battle off at 3 cooldown, and with a skill like Flashing Blade, Marisa would be able to get off a ton of Aether procs. Otherwise, from our damage output, you could go with 2 cooldown specials, which will become 1 cooldown thanks to accelerated specials. With times pulse via Shamshir, every player phase, Marisa guarantees a pre-charged special for herself, and if you initiate combat, you can get double Moonbow procs, and you're getting double the damage from the Shamshir, Wrath, or Spurn skills. I highly doubt Marisa's gonna edge out Ira and her stupid Ragnar Astra spam, but you can try to emulate that playstyle. Overall, I would say Shamshir is an alright weapon for Marisa. It can give her some neat pre-charged special builds, which does have value against units with Guard, since Guard can't stop you if you already got that special charged. Having times pulse on hand is just generally good for any build you go for, but Marisa may need some extra stats to not die too fast, especially if you want to run Wrath. Our next unit is Mel Morgan. Morgan's a 3 to 4 star summonable red infantry mage. He already has a unique tome called Grima's Truth, and with this refined, they actually just completely revamped it. So this 14-might tome does grant a flat +3 defense. Doesn't seem like much, however that's about to change. For the new base effect, Grima's Truth inflicts -5 attack, speed, and res on the nearest foe within 4 spaces at the start of the turn. Additionally, Morgan gets a +5 attack, speed, and res field buff for himself every single turn. The issue with old Grima's Truth is that it did nothing until after combat, where it applied AoE debuffs and AoE buffs from Morgan's team. They got rid of the AoE effect parts, but now Morgan applies a debuff at the start of each turn, and he gets a self buff as well. The debuff only hits the closest enemy though. For the refined part of the weapon, at the start of combat, if Morgan has more than 25% HP, inflict penalty on foe's attack, speed, defense, and res during combat equal to 4 plus any current penalty on each of those stats. Each stat is calculated independently. Alrighty, so this should seem familiar because this refine is basically the same effect we saw from the Pelagian weapons earlier this year. Basically, if Morgan is healthy, he always inflicts -4 to all stats on the enemy. However, if the enemy has stat debuffs, he inflicts more in combat debuffs matching those. This is like a debuff doubler effect on the enemy, and it's extremely powerful. Obviously, this synergizes with the base effect, which applies -5 attack, speed, and res on the closest foe. With Grima's Truth, that's going to then double that debuff and add another -4 on top. That's gonna mean Morgan can inflict -14 attack, speed, and res on the closest foe, which is just kinda gross. He gets way tankier, gets a ton of speed, and does a lot of damage. The weakness of the Pelagian weapons were that they needed some outside source of debuffs. Grima's Truth provides that to some extent, which is fantastic, and even if the foe has no debuffs, then Morgan still buffs himself and applies -4 to all stats. That's already very solid, and Morgan has a decent stat spread for all of these stat advantages. In terms of builds, Grima's Truth has a lot of flexibility. You can do player phase, enemy phase, or mixed phase, which is probably the best. Since Grima's Truth has a 4 space range for the debuff that matches Morgan's attack range, that's going to mean Morgan can initiate on that enemy and inflict all those debuffs, making him quite difficult to take down. With skills like no follow-up, he can bypass follow-up based skills to double slower units, and he can protect himself from enemy doubles. You could go with the usual Swiss Sparrow, but for mixed phase usage, you may want to try a solo skill, a push skill, or maybe even Fury 3 or 4. Even without debuff doubler active, he still self-buffs himself and inflicts some in-combat debuffs. He's going to be weaker to physical damage, but overall Morgan's bow got a lot better. If you want to fight melee units, Morgan can definitely pull off a close counter or close foil set. +3 defense from Grima's Truth actually helps out here, and he inflicts -4 attack as well. If you inflict attack debuffs, then debuff doubler kicks in, and Morgan is going to be deceptively tanky. Close foil adds even more defense, and you can use a low attack variant to deny attack field buffs. With a Solar or Bond Sacred Seal, Morgan can give himself some bonus stats wherever you feel you need them. Just as a reminder, he already gives himself 3 field buffs, so if you want to bring more, you're going to want to use in-combat skills like Joint Drive Attack. Now, for any Morgan build, you can follow the C slot or Sacred Seal slot with a smoke debuff. This gets back some of the old Grima's Truth AoE debuffing effect, and you're going to get debuff doubler going against multiple enemies, which should help Morgan fight on the enemy phase. Attack, speed, or res smoke are all great choices. If you use res smoke, you could even try a Vandal set to just sweep away attackers. I will also mention Panic Smoke, since Panic is different from a regular stat debuff. Panic stats are actually just negative buffs, so they stack with debuffs, and if that happens, you're extra screwed. Funnily enough, since Morgan cannot turn off his own field buffs, he is also vulnerable to Panic, so watch out for those. For additional debuffs, Morgan or his teammates can use Chill, Ploy, or Sabotage skills. The Tamari Dagger would be amazing here. If you would prefer a more supportive build, Morgan could run a Ruse Beast skill, and that way you can apply debuffs from long range. Honestly, if you plan to go for max investment with +10 merges and such, there are a lot of build choices. You could run Desperation, Vantage, double smoke debuffs, Sturdy Impact, bonus doubler, double solo skills, Unity or Bond skills, special spiral, etc. A lot of freedom. This is a very good refine for a 3 to 4 star unit, and if you want a red mage to invest in and you don't mind messing around with debuffs, I think Mel Morgan would be a very fun project. Our third unit is Quan, who is a 5-star Lance Cavalier. Quan previously had the Gae Bolg, which is a 60-might lance that grants +5 attack and defense against infantry, armored, and cavalry foes. This base effect did not get changed. For the special refine, if there is a sword, lance, axe, or cavalry ally on the team, excluding Quan, then he gains another +5 attack and defense during combat. Additionally, Gae Bolg grants plus higher attack and defense to those same sword, lance, axe, and cavalry allies within 3 spaces. For the most part, this is a very simple weapon. Quan can get plus 10 attack and defense against most enemy types. You just need to watch out for flying units. For the refine, you just need one of any of those allied types, and Quan's going to be buffing them up in a pretty sizable range. As a unit, Quan has good base attack with decent defense and a sort of awkward middling speed stat. He has good base HP for a cavalier, but his res stat is terrible, and his refine does nothing to help patch that up. If you're going to use Quan and not bump up his res stat in any way, then you're going to want to avoid any mages or dragons. In terms of builds, well, you can continue stacking attack and defense to just wall off physical enemies. Sturdy Stance 3 would grant guard, which is nice, and low attack and defense would get rid of attack buffs and buff up Quan's damage even more. He will hit hard indeed, but without quicker post or bonus speed, Quan may struggle to finish off enemies in one round. His base speed can be improved, but you're going to need to work for it. You could try something like Steady Posture to help avoid enemy follow-up attacks. Quan's combative row is pretty limited, especially if you aren't investing in speed or resistance. However, the guy can become quite the attack and defense stacking monster. For some other skills, you could go with attack and defense unity or attack and defense solo. Distant foil is an option as well if you are just going to ignore magical damage threats. Now, I do want to touch on Gae Bolg's supportive ability. It does have some team building restrictions, but it's not too bad at all, and it works on all cavalry allies. Joint drive or joint home buffs would be great for Quan. If he has a joint drive attack skill, that would mean plus 9 attack for his whole party in a 2-space range, and that's pretty notable. If you want to go with a cavalry team, you could also run horse emblem buffs, and Quan will be able to buff up ranged cavaliers, which could make a tankier team quite annoying. For sure, not the most exciting refine, and Quan is still a 5-star only unit that has to compete with people like Duso. However, he's fine against physical damage threats and could set up his teammates nicely with a lot of bonus attack or defense. I'm sure the players with highly invested Quans could also run some speed focused builds, and that would help improve his versatility in a fight. Our next refine is for Berserk Armads, which is from Valentine's Hector, who is a seasonal unit. If you missed last month, refines for seasonal unique weapons are now a thing. This situation does get a bit weirder because the original Hector actually has access to Berserk Armads via the weapon refinery. They discontinued this feature, but the damage has been done, and now OG Hector gets refined for a weapon he didn't even start with. I don't know why they are avoiding regular Armads for a refine because it's not even a distant counter weapon, it's just quicker post 3. At this point, what could they do to make it worse than Brave Hector's absolutely busted refine? Alrighty, back on track, Berserk Armads keeps its old effect, Accelerate Specials, and Wrath 3. At the start of the turn, if the unit has less than 75% HP and uses an attacking special, then you get -1 special cooldown. Additionally, plus 10 true damage on special trigger, and Wrath is unique in that its HP condition can become active mid-combat. Hector can start a fight at full HP, but if he takes a strong enough hit, then he gets that plus 10 damage. For the special refine, if foe initiates combat or if the foe is at full health, inflict -5 attack and defense, and if Hector deals damage with a special, he restores 30% of his max HP. So basically this refine is always active on the enemy phase, but can proc on the player phase 2 against a full health foe. Hector inflicts -5 attack and defense, very nice. He then heals 30% max HP every special proc, and this is with a weapon that accelerates specials and has Wrath built in. Goodness, this is a pretty solid refine. It does have anti-synergy with Wrath since Hector may heal above Wrath range that would prevent him from getting the -1 special cooldown on the next turn. However, this healing does give Hector some sustain without running a healing special, and he can easily spam specials thanks to certain skills. In terms of stats, Valentine's Hector and OG Hector are similar: high base HP, high attack, high defense, lower speed, and low res. For those of you with Resplendent Hector, you get an extra +2 to all stats and I believe an extra set of Dragon Flowers. There are a lot of merged up OG Hectors, so he may have quite a bit more speed and HP to utilize. In terms of builds, the Hectors will still mainly be content with the classics. I actually think the good old Distant Counter, Bold Fighter, and Quicker Post Seal build gets a buff with this refine. Obviously, the -5 defense debuff with a follow-up attack means double the extra damage, and Hector has follow-ups for either phase. With Bold Fighter, Hector can charge up a 3 cooldown special like Bonfire in a single hit, then unleash it on hit number 2. If you use Ignis, Hector just needs to take a counterattack, and if he gets low enough, Wrath adds +10 damage as well. Bold Fighter is always nasty to face. Now for Quick Riposte, the healing from the Refine can actually keep Hector in QR range. This is a nice bonus, especially if he shrugs off weaker hits. Now if you want to end things quickly, Hector can instead use Special Fighter. Bonfire becomes a 2 cooldown special, so Hector only needs to take a single hit and he counters with Bonfire. It can potentially get plus 10 damage, and then Hector heals 30% of his max health, so if he takes a second hit, then that's even more health to chew through. Even better, if you use Quick Riposte with this, after a second enemy attack, if they survive, Hector can just whack them again with Bonfire and then heal some more. Obviously, guard effects will stop this setup. Just because we can, Hector is also a fine user of the new save skills, so feel free to add those if you want to make everyone fight him first. Last, let's talk about some other skills. Valentine's Hector comes with Worry Fighter and Glimmer, the idea being that he only takes a single hit and he instant counters with Glimmer, being possibly fueled by Wrath. Next player phase, Wrath's gonna recharge Glimmer. This is a pretty fun setup for basic PvE content, although with the healing from the Refine now, you may actually just run Vengeful Fighter or something instead. As for the meme double Wrath setup, plus 20 damage on top of a special is gross. However, now that Hector heals back up, this may not be as reliable anymore. The same goes for Vantage, since Vantage plus Wrath works nicely. Last, I do like to mention the tier 3 dual threaten skills. It inflicts -5 attack and defense on foes within 2 spaces, which means if you try to bait a 1 movement army unit, you end up taking the debuff. The user also gains +5 attack and defense, and all of this stacks with Berserk's Armads in combat debuffs. Suffice to say, not great to get hit by all of these effects, and this skill can give an enemy phase type build some player phase presence. Overall, this is a fine Refine for Berserk Armads. It's a bit weird since it clashes with the Wrath's special cooldown ability, however it gives Hector more sustain. You could run all kinds of different specials as well, but obviously the more special procs, the more healing Hector's gonna get. Regarding OG Hector, I think if you gave him a ton of investment from back in the day, then the extra Divine Dew cost to get the Berserk Armads is worth it. We could still get a regular Armads Refine as well, so really if anything you can just wait for that to happen, if it ever does. Last up is Sumia, who is a 5-star Lance Flyer. She is in the 4-star special group now, so you may see her pop up randomly. Sumia got a new weapon for herself, the Flowered Lance. It's a 60-man weapon at the start of combat if foe's HP is greater than or equal to 75%, grants +4 to all stats during combat. Very simple weapon, fight a healthy-ish foe and you get bonus stats. For the Refine, it enables Canto 2. If an ally has less than 80% HP, Sumia can also move to a space adjacent to that ally. Then, if she initiates combat or if is within 2 spaces of an ally, she gains +5 attack and speed during combat. The Lance Flyer group is an incredibly competitive group with a ton of good, low rarity options. I think it's safe to say that Flower Lance definitely makes Sumia worthy of her 5-star rarity. She's going to be our second unit ever to have Canto, and this allows movement after you do an attack using a Cisco or destroy a structure. This ability is just straight up busted, and it's part of why Regan is top tier as well. Sumia will be able to fly in and then fly right back out, and unlike Regan, her Canto is not limited to only the first 4 turns. This is fantastic for longer fights as Canto's movement is just so powerful. What's even crazier is that Sumia has a super Wings of Mercy skill under 80% HP, and she can warp to an ally. She can use Wings of Mercy over to someone, reposition them, and then use Canto to move again. You should know that Canto 2 only limits Wings of Mercy to 2 spaces when warping. You cannot warp across the whole map during the Canto action. Now, of mobility aside, Flower Lance with the Refine ends up giving Sumia +9 attack and speed, which is very nice. Her base attack is a bit low, but she is pretty fast, so this is a very good offensive boost. Additionally, +4 defense and res isn't bad either, so you could go for a more tankier build if you want. In terms of builds, I'm sure the most common set will be the usual player phase skills. So Sparrow, Desperation, and Speed and Defense Rain makes for 1 deadly initiation, and after attacking, Sumia gets to Canto away. With Wings of Mercy also available, it just makes sense to have a strong player phase build to give Sumia the most amount of options. She can warp to an ally, attack a foe, then Canto backwards. With some dancers, Sumia will be very fun to mess around with. While Desperation is fine for most things, you could go for Dive Bomb if you have it. Flower Lance will always have its +9 attack and speed boost if Dive Bomb is also active. Now, if you want to mess around with some brawling builds, we do have some mixed phase skills. Attack and speed catch is already coming back on Farina on the banner, so if you have a debuffing team, it's not a bad option. If you want to boost defense or res, Sumia could try an impact, bond stacking, or unity skill. She can warp next to an ally, so maybe soul skills are not the best choices here. Additionally, Fury or the push skills could give an option as well. She is going to drop her HP a good bit, but something like Fury 4 can give +8 defense and res if you combine it with the Flower Lance, and that's pretty respectable for 1v1 fights. Fury can also allow Sumia to act as a Wings of Mercy beacon herself. She can initiate, get hurt, and then move backwards to set up a Wings of Mercy ally. If you use a skill like Lunge, Drag Back, or Hit and Run, and Canto is gonna proc afterwards, which can create all kinds of chaos. Sumia can initiate, lunge forward, and then move again, and a Wings of Mercy ally could just come flying in afterwards. If you would prefer a slightly safer tactic, Flower Lance is made to run with Sumia's default attack and defense link skill. She can reposition an ally, then buff them and herself, and then you can use Canto and move to move afterwards. Farina from the banner is also bringing a Snag a B skill, which is like a debuffing version of the link skills. Sumia could reposition or swap, proc the Snag debuff, then retreat with Canto. As a flyer, Sumia can also of course run the flyer mobility skills. If Wings of Mercy isn't ready, flyer formation could let her move around the team, reposition someone and then Canto away. Or if you run guidance, Sumia could make an attack, move backwards with Canto, and then guidance lets an ally move forward afterwards. There are so many playmaking possibilities. Next, there is also Gale Force. It may be a bit tough for Sumia to proc, but if you get Gale Force ready, it does proc before Canto. That means when you have Gale Force, you must do an action to get Canto active. You cannot just proc Gale Force and then wait. Nothing's going to happen afterwards. Last, let's talk about Odd or Even Tempest plus Dagger. The Tempest skills grant 3 movement every other turn and flyers can use them. However, Canto 2 will only let Sumia move 2 spaces. She can get the 3 movement to make an attack, but afterwards the Canto action will only ever move 2 spaces. It won't be like Regan who has Canto 3. With that said, we just got Dagger who has the Pathfinder ability. As we saw, Canto does combo with Pathfinder for some really nasty movement options. Sumia could be behind Dagger, and then with Pathfinder she can move onto these space daggers on for free, then move 2 spaces forward. You can make an attack, and then Canto will let her move backwards onto Dagger's space with Pathfinder, and then back to her original spot. It's like we're actually playing Apex Legends flying across Pathfinder's zipline. We may have a lot of lance flyers in this game, but you snap on Canto and you instantly have a unique pick, at least for the time being. That's going to be it for this video. We've gone on long enough, but do feel free to share your thoughts on these weapons and refines. I don't really even use my own Sumia, but I already gave her the refine just to mess around. Morgan's refine is also pretty nuts. I'm surprised they gave him so many effects, even though he's one of the demoted units. I think he's going to do well for himself for those merging him up. Thanks for watching. I will be talking about the banner units and then our next Grand Hero Battle unit coming up. Hope to see you guys soon.